I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Say things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never shook, baby.
Just joking.
Just
All
a
right.
couple of jokey boys.
Feedy's in position here. I don't know. It's probably because I start talking, but he knows like exactly when the podcast is going to start and just comes over and starts rubbing himself on the microphone. So that's him.
I'm cool with, if you want to be replaced, we can have a cat instead.
Just have the cat.
Yeah.
That would be that'd probably be more popular than what we're doing. So
There's a Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis.
I love that. I haven't seen
that.
That
Was great.
While, though.
Yeah, they haven't released any new episodes in a couple of years, but
good.
There was one. I don't remember which guest he had on, but the guest got really mad, and it's all like it's all a joke, it's all fake.
Yeah.
But the guest got really upset, so they walked off. They walked off the show, and then Zach goes, "You know what? Like, you know what would be more interesting? Like, that walk off was so boring. Like, me talking to air would be much more interesting. Like, I'm telling you right now, we'd get more views of me talking to air." So he looks at the empty chair. He goes, "So what movies have you been in?" Like, wait, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then it just cuts to credits.
Two of my favorites of that are someone, I forget if it's Justin Bieber or Brad Pitt or someone just like starts texting like during the interview and it's like not paying attention. And then someone calls him fat. And he's like, "I'm not that fat." And it gets in his face, and he sits down and falls out. Oh yeah, and then he falls out of the chair. And then my favorite one, I still say to this day, is just like, "Don't touch my fern." Like someone's like touching the fern again. I don't remember who. "Don't touch my fern."
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
But so today we're talking.
That's fern talk.
Yeah. So today,
my cat, not you.
Joe, stop talking.
You can keep going.
We're talking about identity politics.
Yay! This time we're being the identity politics.
The identity politicians.
Yes.
So this is an article
we're doing
found.
My new favorite website, Compact.
Yeah.
They seem very interesting because even though I've only read a handful of things on there, it's like I recognize their whole thing is, and this isn't new, is like centrist, right? Like we're the center, and that's fine, good. Like I'm not opposed to that at all. And just like kind of looking through, I recognize some of the names. I'm like, oh, that guy is like that's like a Jacobin leftist. Like I've heard him on podcasts, and that guy, like, oh, he's like kind of heterodox right wing. Like so, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Just sometimes having people that like right off the bat, I know their ideology. Some like I'm like, oh, like they wouldn't be on the same. Well, on like the 99% of websites, those two people would not have articles.
Right.
And I think that's cool. I've just been reading a handful of other things. So
no, that's a cool position to take. And I think, I think we've talked about this before where centrism can kind of come off as sort of like milk toasty, fence sitting.
People like pleasing everyone and not really having values.
But I think, it's kind of evolving now where it's not so much about like, not having a backbone, not having like a definitive stance on something. It's more about like the center should be a place where we should meet, where it's like where we kind of put aside like the crazy extremists on our own side and be like, the free press, which we're big fans of. I remember the week that RFK Jr. was he was being grilled before he got confirmed.
Yeah, in the Senate. Yeah.
Yeah, and they put out two articles. They put out several articles. Two of them were critical of RFK Jr. and two of them were praising him. And I thought that was cool. And they did the same week.
Cool.
So
they do that. Well, obviously they do that on purpose, and they've done that with lots of issues.
Yeah.
And I agree. That's great, and that's why I like the free press a lot. I don't know if they would ever have like a pro-Palestinian voice on there. Right. I'll say that, but that's you can't bat 1,000.
Yeah.
That's fine. So, and again, I agree with probably a good amount of the free press on that whole sticky issue. Yeah. But I would give them a lot of props if they had like not like a muckraker, but a muckraker, like someone who's thoughtful, like a Dave Smith, who like has a thoughtful opinion of it. I mean, Dave Smith is like whatever you want to call it, ethnically, culturally Jewish, and he's a huge critic of Israel, and we know that because there's been nonstop coverage of the Douglas Murray, Dave Smith, Rogan appearance.
And it's still going too. It's still going on.
Free Press just had some, and I listen regularly to. Honestly, I'm a big fan of Barry Weiss. I love her style of podcast, and I saw that. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I like Douglas Murray on a lot of stuff. I think he did come off as a huge boner in that. I think his British was showing too much as a fan of the British overall. Like it was very much that pedigree. A lot of people like where we have race issues a lot in the US, Britain has class issues. They have race issues too, and we have class issues too, but that's like more their thing. And he came off and I don't even think he's from money or anything like that. I think he grew up poor, if I remember correctly. And he's gay, right? Yeah. But like he came off very much as like the snooty Englishman. And
you haven't been. You haven't been. I mean,
Dave Smith is like the opposite. He's just like a dude from Brooklyn, comedian. And again, I thought Douglas Murray was right about some stuff too. Like again, I wasn't like all on Dave's side on that. But sorry.
Yeah, I agree with your agreement.
Good. That's
I think actually your agreement actually lines up with my agreement. So
sure, we're all agreeing. Agreeing synergy. So we're getting back to the compact. We're gonna do this article. We considered doing it like last week, I think, and then we went long enough with whatever topic we did last week. I can't even remember. And so we'll do it this week. This is about whites. This is about the whites, white writers. So let me pull it up. I have it right here. So the title is "The Vanishing White Male Writer" by Jacob Savage, and this was March 21st, 2025. So it's like 5-6 weeks old now. I'll just read. It's not too long. I like that too about compact. The articles don't seem like too long, which I like.
They're very compact.
Fuck. Is that why it's called that?
I don't know. I doubt it.
So that was good, Joe. That's why I keep you around. So I'll just get into it. I have noticed. I even thought what's crazy to me is I wasn't going to pose it this way, but I thought about even years ago as a male writer. Of writing something like, why have men? I was going to make it racial because I don't think it's racial on that end, but like, why have men stopped reading? Because it feels like, and this is a chicken or the egg situation. You go into a bookstore, the vast majority of books are Instagrammable covers of Asian and white lady names, and then like the super African name. They're all about the immigrant experience and genderqueer couples. There will be it's overtly political. And again, I'm someone who goes on my way. Like I want to patronize independent bookstores. I love independent bookstores, and I don't know. And again, we make this argument ourselves. It's like, well, if that's where the money is, sure. Like then if the vast majority of your readers are like young, progressive liberals with their pronouns, like I'm all for it because that's who your customers are. That's business. Say it about everything. Or is it and I think the argument could be, well, a lot of male writers and then especially white male writers aren't being published. It's looked at as, we have a glut of them forever. Basically, there used to be a point where female writers had to change their names. Off the top of my head, you have
S.C. Hinton.
S.C. Hinton. Did she write The Outsiders?
That's right.
I was actually thinking of her name. Thank you, S.C. Hinton. Who wrote Jane Eyre?
Oh, Emily Dickinson. Or no, that was one of the Brontes, right?
Yeah, Bronte. No, she didn't. Well, I'm thinking of. I'm blanking on some names right now. I'm not doing a good job at that. But that's the thing, of course. Like, so it was the complete opposite. There were no female writers, and the ones that there were had to change their names to even get published. And so of course there could be like a correction, but I do think there's an overcorrection. I don't think that these stories aren't, and of course this doesn't apply like Stephen King and the establishment, like the young male writer, especially the young, and when there usually is a young male writer, he's Nigerian or he's half Latino, half Asian from the valley or something, and his dad's working in Taiwan, and so he grew up with a single mother, so something like that, right? And that's always forward. And why I say that is because that's put forward in the reviews, and like it's that experience. It's not, well, that guy wrote a book about, I don't know, a fantasy story or something. It's nothing to do with his identity. It's like the identity is as they say, centered. It's at the forefront.
I mean, because there are 2 small independent bookstores here in Highland Park within walking distance of where I live. So you think I'd be like, as someone who loves books, that's so cool. But both of them are hyper progressive.
I think we went in one. We went some weird store. I don't know what to call it. It was a crit store is what I would call it. I don't know if you remember, this was the first time I visited. But it was just like a bizarre place that was just like the crit utopia.
I think that was in Echo Park, and like they just had a whole bunch of different sets. But it was a bookstore, but they also had just a bunch of it was just
like
crap
all over the place. Store, and it was tchotchke, like progressive tchotchke, and that sort of thing. So anyway, so I don't know the answer to this. I don't think that young white men have stopped writing, and if they have, it's because they found something else that's more lucrative, that's more, even a chance. I don't even mean lucrative as in making money. I mean, they won't even get published in literary magazines that don't pay. So it's not even about like money. It's about exposure or even having your stories put out there. So it's like after so many rejections, you understand someone not wanting to, and again, rejections because of their race and or gender. And this happened again. We always bring up that poet, the white male poet who published a bunch of poems, got rejected, republished them under a overtly Chinese name, and then got published over, many times. And didn't change.
I was about to say, is it going to be like a role reversal now, where men are going to have to start, like male writers are going to change their names or hide their names to be published?
Well, yes, there was another one. So we've talked about that, like going back to like 2020, like one of our first episodes, I think we talked about that. That happened, I think, like 2017, 18, like that time, right? This happened again recently, and I forgot the details already, but Blocked and Reported did a good episode on this, Katie, and they had a guest on that, and this happened again. But that was a pretty big deal in that world. So, which shows, we are the first ones to say like things should be published, things should be created, based on their merits, not on identity. But this is showing that this isn't like, it's not about like, all these other people are making better work, because when the work is given those identifiers, it's then shared, it's published, it's create, like all of that stuff. So again, this isn't like what people are calling like woke right stuff. I don't agree with that in the vast majority of cases. Maybe I could see a good argument for it, but that's so I'm trying to distinguish that here, because you say, oh, Ben, you're being a hypocrite. It's like, no, if this was happening to, if there were fill in the blank identity, and they weren't getting published or whatever, they weren't getting the deal for whatever. I mean, this is about like in fair housing, they test this. I remember I applied, I like in New Orleans as a law student, you could do something where I remember you could pretend to look at apartments, and like this company would hire you, and then you would see if you would get it, and then they would have like a black person do it and see if it was still available, and to see if if they're discriminating. And that was like a thing. That was a thing you could do. I think you get paid for it, to see, are these landlords discriminating? And like it's the same concept. It's like, well, is this editor, are they publishing based on the merit or on the identity? Or are they keeping out? So just reverse it. Are they keeping out because of identity? Now, a lot of times, though, because you can, you don't have a right to have your work published. Like you have a right to housing in some sense. You don't have a right to housing. You have a right to be discriminated, not to be discriminated against. But, imagine if there was apartments that said, oh, we're only accepting these people. It's like, but you look at any publication, they will overtly say, we're only publishing gender this or race that, right? So I say all of that, and then we'll get into this. This is so I say all that to say to get to the point of I've noticed this even going back to when I was myself very progressive. Like I noticed this. I noticed the people who were in writing groups, the people who were I was very much like, oh, who are the best sellers, what's in stores. Well, I was into all of that, sending to publications, and I noticed much more is like overwhelmingly female. And I think, the argument was back in the day, whatever day you want to fill that in, because it was for pretty much all of history. Well, if men, even if it was subconscious, they were only getting other men. If it was white men, they only wanted other white men, and whatever thing. Well, look at editors now in publishing houses. They're overwhelmingly come from upper middle class to wealthy white liberal women in a handful of cities. So it makes sense that those are the stories that they want to publish, or those are the people, or they want the the crit points for public, finding that whatever. I mean, American Fiction did all. There's an amazing movie about this. So they definitely, like, white men are at the bottom of the rung here. So they don't want that at all. They either want people like them because they associate with it, even subconscious, or they want whatever the points are to score the points with their, at the liberal cocktail parties.
Right.
I'm not even necessarily saying that's wrong in the sense of just apply the same logic. Like if you're saying white men were only doing that, I just watched Mad Men with my wife like a few months ago. So it's like, notice it's all white guys, all like middle-aged white guys. It's like, so just apply the same logic now to like editors. Yeah. And that's what it is. All right. So let's get into this. Again, this is Jacob Savage, the Vanishing Male White Writer. It's easy to trace the decline of young white men in American letters. Just browse the New York Times's notable fiction list. In 2012, the Times included 7 white American men under the age of 43, the cutoff for millennial today. In 2013, there were 6. In 2014, there were 6. And then the doors shut. By 2021, there was not one white male millennial on the notable fiction list. There were none again in 2022, and just one apiece in 2023 and 2024. Since 2021, just 2 of the 72 millennials featured were white American men. There were no white male millennials featured in Vulture's 2024 year-end fiction list, none in Vanity Fair's, none in The Atlantic's. Esquire, a magazine ostensibly geared towards white male millennials, I used to be a regular reader of The Atlantic and Esquire, has featured 53 millennial fiction writers on its year-end book list since 2020. Only 1 was a white American man. So he is using like American here. I'll say I looked at the New York Times 2024 notable books list. Now, I didn't intend to do that. I meant to do fiction. About halfway through, I was like, oh, crap, this isn't. So this actually skews more white male because white men write much more nonfiction than fiction. And this is about fiction. And that's what I write mostly. Yeah. But even so, and I didn't get through the whole thing. I was doing it until you sent me the link. So what percentage do you think, and we did the math before, so what percentage do you think out of the list, notable books, that's all it is, notable books, what percentage do you think are white men?
10%.
It was 21. Okay. So about 1 in 5 are white men. Again, this was books. Yeah. This skewed, and even towards the end, I noticed there were more nonfiction. Like if this was just it was much less when it was more fiction books. So again, we talk about representation. I mean, white men make up a much larger percentage of the populace than 21%, especially writers, right? Again, you put education in there, income. Writers tend to be middle class, if not higher, and white people are more middle class and higher than the rest of the population overall. In each racial group. So that's pretty low. Right. That's a pretty low percentage. Right. So I wanted to put that because that was 2024. So, and by the way, I can't see you. I mean, I guess I could. Let me try if this works. Let me see if this works. Because I don't know if you want to like interrupt when I'm talking. So I'm just, no, my laptop's being stupid. So if you want to cut, basically I can't see like a queue if you want to jump in or something. So just do it if I'm reading. Okay. All right.
Cool.
All right. So over the course of the 2010s, the literary pipeline for white men was effectively shut down. Between 2001 and 2011, 6 white men won the New York Public Library's Young Lions Prize for debut fiction. Since 2020, not a single white man has even been nominated, of 25 total nominations. The past decade has seen 70 finalists for the Center for Fiction's first novel prize, with, again, not a single straight white American millennial man. So again, I am noticing he does change like the demographics sometimes. Like now it's straight or American. Like I was just going off of I wasn't looking into like orientation and stuff like that.
Right. So there's a slight. He seems to be cherry picking a little bit here.
Yeah, I agree, because if it's like, well, the article was the Vanishing White Male Writer. It wasn't anything about gay or straight, Right. So agreed. Okay, so a 14 millennial finalists for the National Book Award during that same period, exactly 0 were white men. The Wallace Stegner Fellowship at Stanford, a launching pad for young writers, currently has 0 white male fiction and poetry fellows. Of 25 fiction fellows since 2020, of 25 fiction fellows since 2020, just 1 was a white man. Perhaps most astonishingly, not a single white American man born after 1984 has published a work of literary fiction in the New Yorker. At least 24 and probably closer to 30 younger millennials have been published in total. That's pretty astounding.
Right. Well, this is the sort of thing that really fuels a lot of identitarianism on the sort of like the Andrew Tate crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the overcorrection.
Yeah, it's like, it's again, so people are gonna, I could see the argument being like, how are you doing anything differently than the progressive left? Like it's the same thing. You're like literally doing percentages of people and making lists, and it's like, yes, and the progressive left, like there was a point where that was actually correct, when there was discrimination, when it was intentionally keeping people out of jobs, out of whatever you want to put in there. Like, yep. And that was wrong. And that's been not only reversed, actively, attempted to change with government intervention, with all sorts of programs. Like that is, that's the difference, is that there is an effort from higher education, from the government, from corporation, like left and right, from all of them to remedy that. But
yeah. And what bothers me about a lot of this, or one of the many things that bothers me about this, is that there's no point where they're going to say, okay, that's enough discrimination. We're going to like open up the field to everyone. Because I'm all in favor of diversity by addition, but if it's diversity by subtraction, that's when I'm like, okay, you're actually actively discriminating against. If you want to add more chairs to the table, I have 0 problems with that. But now you're taking the seats away from people who are already sitting there, and you're kicking them out.
And again, and we'll say this till we're blue in the face. I do always forget that term, but I like it. Diversity by addition instead of subtraction. The vast majority of these people, whether they're transgender, Blasian, whatever, or they're straight white men, they're probably not like the straight white man and the whatever mixed identity, whatever you want to put, they actually probably are both like ideologically similar in a lot of ways. Like I doubt that they're publishing any, like the story, like I'm not even talking about the stories here. We're not even talking, like that's actually what matters in the end. Is there a diversity of stories?
Right.
Is there different points of view, different time periods, different experiences? This is just the identity. So I don't even know, like, you go and look at, if you combed through these people's social media accounts, their vote, like a lot of people are very open about their politics. Like I would guarantee you the slant in that end is overwhelmingly left. Jonathan Haidt's book was on this list, by the way. I like that. Now, I don't know what his politics are outside of a handful. Like I'm assuming he was the typical heterodox, like used to be considered liberal, and
he described
no fan of Trump
himself as a centrist in recent years. but yeah, he's like, oh, but all the work I've done, through the '90s was to help Democrats. So yeah, I guess
Sure.
center left.
It's like the Gen X liberal who's now a centrist who flirts with the right on some stuff. That's like the heterodox free press meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
I'm sure a big portion of them in 2024 held their nose and voted for Trump.
Yep.
And they were proudly voting for Hillary 8 years earlier.
Yeah.
So we're not even getting into like that, like what actually matters in the diversity aspect here.
Yeah.
All right. So where was I? The kind of novel we think about as the literary novel, the Updike or DeLillo, I think is harder for white men, a leading fiction agent told me, in part because I don't know the editors who are open to hearing a story of the sort of middle to upper middle class white male experience. The young agents and editors didn't come up in that culture. The agent proceeded to list white male writers who have carved out a niche for themselves. Nathan Hill, who I'm a fan of, I read a couple of his books. He's very good. He kind of like breaks this mold. He is like the young, he's like in his 30s, white male straight writer. Joshua Cohen, Ben Lerner, Michael Connolly, Adam Ross. I don't know any of those guys, but none was younger than Cohen, who was born in 1980. Oh, so Hill. Okay, so he's probably in his 40s then. Okay. The more thoughtful pieces on the subject tend to frame the issue as a crisis of literary masculinity, the inevitable consequence of an insular, female-dominated publishing world. All true to a point. But while there are no male Sally Rooney's or Otessa Moshfegs or Emma Kleins, that's a tough name, or Emma Kleins, there are no white Tommy Oranges or Tao Lins or Tony Let Them Mutes. I actually looked up two of those guys. I have a Tao Lin book. I like Tao Lin. He's very funny. His book was pretty good. He's a good follow on Twitter. You should follow him. He tweets about like his autistic cat a lot. He was on. I'm not even kidding. I know this is like a sidebar. I'm going on a side quest right now. I don't know if you listen to Red Scare but like listen to his episode on Red Scare where he's talking about his dad's gambling addiction. I don't even mean to laugh. It was one of the hardest I've laughed in like years. It is so goddamn, because he's really is a really slow cadence. Yeah. And he's like, I think he's because he's on the spectrum and he's super like dry, but he's talking about like the funniest shit. Yeah. Highly recommend the listen. You don't need any context of the podcast. It just like highly recommend it. That's all side quest. So the other Tommy Orange I looked up because it was not when I was doing my checking the boxes for white men here. It's Tommy Orange. Nope, Tommy Orange is Native American. And Tony Tulamithutes is, I thought that was a woman, but maybe I'm wrong. But obviously not a white guy. Okay. Some of this is undoubtedly part of a dynamic that's played out across countless industries. Publishing houses like Hollywood, writers' rooms, and academic tenure committees had a glut of established white men on their rosters. And the path of least resistance wasn't to send George Saunders or Jonathan Franzen out to pasture. But despite these pressures, there are white male millennial novelists. Diversity preferences may explain their absence from prize lists, but they can't account for why they've so completely failed to capture the zeitgeist. Okay. The reasons for that go deeper. All those attacks on the lit bro, the mockery of male literary ambition, exemplified by the sudden cultural banishment of David Foster Wallace, have had a powerfully chilling effect. Unwillingly to portray themselves as victims, cringe, politically wrong, or as aggressors, toxic masculinity, unable to assume the authentic voices of others, appropriation, younger white men are no longer capable of describing the world around them. Instead, they write genre. They write suffocatingly tight autofiction. They write fantastic and utterly terrible period pieces. Anything to avoid grappling directly with the complicated nature of their own experience in contemporary America.
Yeah, that's a
tricky
one, man.
It's actually longer than I thought, but
no, that, like the idea of, because I mean, like, the white male is such a charged subject in culture right now, where it's, I mean, so remember Barbenheimer
Yeah.
a couple years ago. So I was talking to a coworker about that when it came out, and she went to go see both. She did the back-to-back screenings, and then she's a very woke progressive person, and she very, very begrudgingly admitted that Oppenheimer was a great film. But she goes, yeah, it was a great film. It's Chris Nolan, but at the same time, it's still just whatever, celebrating a white man. But Barbie was amazing, and it was sort of like she just couldn't say, oh, it was a great movie, but I really like Barbie.
Yeah,
she just had to throw that in there, like that asterisk of, but it's at the same time we have to accept, acknowledge that we're celebrating a white man yet again.
Sure. It's left wing throat clearing.
Yeah,
exactly. It's because God forbid someone hears her say Oppenheimer was a great movie. It's like, oh, you mean the guy who bombed all those non-white men?
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's and I don't want to make white men seem to be like the victims here, but at the same time, it's like it is kind of like a weird thing that they're in right now, of like, how do you write about something from your perspective without stepping on that tripwire,
Yeah. Well, the answer is you either write it and try and get it published however you can, and find, we've talked about like we talk about a lot with movies, right? All the time. It's like, well, if Hollywood's not going to make a certain perspective or for a certain audience, something will. Like, that is the market, and that is the benefit of markets. Yeah. But you try and get it published by a smaller publisher. I don't know if there's ever going to be like that sort of, I don't know if a business like that is going to exist. I think it's unlike movies. I think it's such a liberal female dominated field. And I don't know if there's any publisher who's going to go out of their way to publish male stories. Yeah. I don't know. But I don't my fear would be, you don't want a great novel to not exist because you're afraid not enough people will read it. Right. That I think that's a shame. Yeah. Okay, let's see. All right, so imagine for a moment that you are a youngish white male novelist attempting to write your big splashy everything novel. You want to understand your alienation from yourself, your family, the monoculture around you. You're a bookish person. You're a novelist after all. So you take your toddler son to the bookstore. He's been asking for a book about whales or fire trucks or trains. These are present, but prominent placement is given to a different kind of book. You see a large display for Queens of the Jungle, meet the female animals who rule the animal kingdom, right next to a YA adaptation of Isabel Wilkerson's Cast and a Ruth Bader Ginsburg book for babies. If you're a normal white male millennial, you probably roll your eyes. If you're a maniac like me, you text photos of the display to your group chats. If you're a hero or a Democratic congressman, you tell your 2.5-year-old son, come on, gender isn't even a thing. You really should buy the book about girl boss animals. NPR said it's great. But for the last decade or so, the question for our novelist has been trickier. That moment at the bookstore was, at worst, an annoyance. How do you describe a flickering moment of alienation without making your novel an exhausting chronicle of such things? On the other hand, how do you not describe it? If your own internal monologue can't be adapted to the page, what can? Most avoid the question altogether. Some, like Adam Ehrlich Sachs, Gretel and the Great War, retreat to the safety of history. Others, like Zach Wilson, Beautiful Days, employ genre, self-described social science fiction, to maintain a deep authorial remove from the real world. Still others seek a milieu so distant the cultural transformations on the home front don't register. Phil Clay's Missionaries, a deep dive into American influence and imperialism in Colombia, could have been written at any point in the past 60 years.
So just kind of listening out like the safe routes that white writers can go down.
And again, I don't know if this is also I call this dad books, the World War II, Civil War, sports, like those kind of books. Again, there's always going to be that readership.
Right.
And I think that is fine, but the point here is that there's not just the typical fiction book that that is not being written by those guys anymore. So this article is much longer than I thought.
It's not so compact. Compact, lie to us.
Yeah, seriously. I was reading all these other articles and let me. I want to talk about this part because this is. I do think this has part to do with it too. So, it's actually coincidental because I'm wearing a Iowa hat, but the Iowa Writers Workshop is like the pillar of the MFA workshop. Like if you watch Girls, Lena Dunham's character Hannah gets into the Writers Workshop there, which is extremely difficult. So that's like going to Harvard Law for lawyers. It's like the best. It's the best of the best. So, and these programs have really. Hold on for a sec. These programs have really proliferated all over the country. At least at the Iowa's Writers Workshop is free if you get in, so that's a good thing. I mean, obviously it's subsidized by other graduates, but Columbia, which is like ranked number 2, that one's like $50,000. So I definitely would not pay to go to one of these.
Yeah,
and maybe get your book published that no one will read. So the antiseptic legacy of Obama-era MFA programs hangs over this generation. All 3 of the above authors graduate from Iowa, and I skipped that paragraph, but it's like Lee Cole, Stephen Markley, and someone else. The Workshop to Death, shorn of swagger and toxicity, and above all humor, these books serve more as authorial performances than as novels, as long-winded way of saying, don't worry, I'm one of the good ones. My heart is in the right place. So I guess we can stop there because this goes on and on a little more, but let me go down to here and then we'll wrap this up, because he says here, maybe as some like to point out, the vibe is shifting. There are more promising literary releases on the horizon, but for all the talk about the new moment, about how things are finally opening up, the stifling cultural environment of the last decade isn't quite over. While Andrew Boriga, Victim, and Tony, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name again, are free to skewer identity pieties, white male millennials are still unable to speak directly to their own condition. In some ways, that inability is their condition. It is striking how few of these novels deal with relationships and children, professional and personal jealousies, the quiet resentments, or even the unexpected joys of shifting family roles. And I will say, I think Nathan Hill, who we mentioned earlier, is an exception to that. I think that's exactly what his last book was that I read, that I found at a hotel in Naples, which was pretty cool. In Italy. I was like, oh, that's on my list. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Instead, okay, so we'll do this. Instead, a fever urge to disclaim appears over and over, unremarked upon and unexplored, both in print and in real life. I mean, white guys still run the world, especially in that gross nexus of higher ed and yawny high lit, one millennial writer wrote me, as if reassuring himself of phantom powers he no longer possessed. He had just been fired from his adjunct teaching job, and his agent had told him his latest novel was unlikely to sell. But he insisted my line of inquiry wasn't savory. What's the point in even being upset about such supposed indignities as not being published as a white guy? And I guess we'll leave it there.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I that dismissive attitude, I think, is disgustingly bigoted, because I mean, like, just swap out any non-white race with that, and it's just like, you'd be called a bigot, you'd be called a racist. Maybe, well, yeah, well, who cares if black writers aren't getting published? So what? Who cares if Asian writers aren't getting published, right? But,
or if they did, and if you sub that in, they would call it self-hating.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, think about it. Okay, a young black guy gets cut from his basketball team. It's like, what? There aren't enough black guys in the NBA. Right, like, what do you mean? Like, oh, there's plenty. What does it matter for me? It's like, that's so self-defeating and kind of a very typical.
Yeah, and real quick, so I just did a little bit of Googling, and so somebody wrote a response to this. It's a very long one, so I'm not going to go into it, but so this is in Current Affairs. It's written by Alex Skopic. The title of the article is "The White Male Writer is Fine, I Promise.
In Compact Magazine, Jacob Savage complains that the white male writer is becoming an endangered species, but that's a lazy, self-absorbed narrative that obscures the real threats to literature today. Again, a long article, but I just want to shine a spotlight on this one quick passage here. What Savage doesn't consider, though, is the possibility that there may be reasons for this other than some vague woke conspiracy to keep the white man down. For one, it's possible that, simply put, no white male writer in the last 8-ish years has sent the big 5 publishers anything as interesting or readable as Mushfeg's My Year of Rest and Relaxation or Klein's The Guest. So
I find that bizarre. Like, I find that an insane thing to say.
Exactly.
First of all, he goes back like over a decade, and you look at the numbers, and it's just like not like this. That's just a numbers game.
Yeah,
but like that's just not true. And if you want, like, I thought that's a she, right? Who wrote that?
No, it's a guy.
Oh, it's a guy. Okay, so he you know, if he was gonna say like, oh, you know, well, a lot of white male writers are doing more nonfiction, or they're just going into other areas, right? Like if the market starts to dry up, you know, it could be not necessarily chicken or the egg. It could be a little bit of both. You know, right. This one starts lessening. There are less for the you know, the correction to have more, you know, distinct voices or whatever. Then there's going to be less white readers, in which case then there's going to be less white writers being published and less white readers. And like that, I think is a fine argument. That's just market capitalism. But to say like that they haven't sent, like, anyone who knows anything about the business actually knows marketability is everything.
Yep. It's,
can you market it? And the more liberal wine moms who are doing book clubs, who are buying these books, they're not going to read, you know, a 27-year-old's novel like about and I get it, and that's fine. And that's where I say, like, I want men to read more. And I found this woman who's in the business, and she does, like, she's done videos about this. It's like, I want to get men reading again. Like, there are good books, they exist, like there are these stories, and she laments it. And she thinks it's such a shame, and actually it's becoming staid on that side. It's like there's another, you know, it's just another story about domestic violence, and another woman, and like another graduate student in a city, and it's like the same kind of stuff. Or another immigrant story. Like, how many times are we going to hear about that? And I still think they can be interesting, but so many of them are just rote at this point. Like Dee Dee, that movie was like a coming of age immigrant story, came out last year. I don't think it got a lot of like press at all. That movie was great. It was a fantastic movie. It was about a young Asian kid in the Valley in like the 90s. He's kind of like Ari, like when we grew up, and he actually pretends to be half white. Like that's what, like, it was like he lies that he's only half Asian because his dad's over in China or Taiwan working, and you know, that was a great coming of age story. It felt different. It felt fresh, like, and had a lot of some of the same tropes of the coming of the immigrant story, but it was really, really great. So again, like, it's just, I find this so tedious. Like, you know, they're fine. It's like, no, it's you're clearly not arguing in good faith. Like, no one can. You can argue in good faith and say the market might have dried up. It may have been an overcorrection, but now the like young white guys aren't reading. I think, but again, I don't think this is racial. I just think young men don't read.
Yeah,
I really don't. Like, I look at, I don't necessarily consider myself like a young man, but I'm a millennial. But I mean, like, let's say 30, like mid 30s, which I am, we are, and like 20s. Like, I don't think a lot of guys read novels.
Right.
You and I do.
Yeah.
But we're like the only ones.
Right. Yeah, it's I wonder if it's just like, you know, hustle culture has just become yeah,
so you could look at it and say it's you know, it's I ain't got time to read, right? I ain't got time to bleed.
Exactly.
One of my favorite lines that makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I got time to read. Like, I'm gonna make that meme.
I like Shane Black's reaction where he's just like, "Oh, okay."
Who is that? That's Jesse Ventura, right? Predator. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, you could say, you know, that's a privilege to be able to like read a novel while I'm working 2 jobs. I get it, dude. Like, I get it, but I also think that young dudes, it's more about Twitch streaming, and it's I don't think it's necessarily like working. Like that's one thing. I think their free
It's grinding,
time
dude. It's called grinding.
Grinding. Sorry. I love that tweet. That's like, my dentist told me I grind in my sleep. He's real as fuck for that.
Yeah, I see that. That's good.
I don't think. I think it's whatever, how much free time you have, whether you have a dearth or a plethora of it, you're not using it to read. I just don't. I see it with people I know, with my like very much less than I should say much less than there used to be. And I do talk. I talk books with a coworker. He's a young white guy, but it's not nearly as common, I feel like, as it used to be.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And I'm sure that out there, Pink News or something has put out
gay news.
Yeah, it's put out an article about like, men aren't reading books these days, and there's and that's a real problem.
Yeah, dude, it's the what was it? It was like I think it was the Ghostbusters remake where
there's Little Women that
yes, maybe it's Little Women, and it was like,
freaking out
men, this movie isn't for you, and then it's like the same publication. Why aren't men seeing Little Women?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I actually saw Little Women. I liked Little Women.
Actually, yeah, I read the book, and I actually like in my 20s, like of my own volition, not for like an assignment. I actually thought it was pretty decent. I actually
that's a weird thing to do.
I know. No, but here's the thing. So when I heard that they were making an adaptation of it, I was like, oh, like I read the books. It's pretty decent. Like I might watch the movie, but then like it became so radioactive because of that whole stupid controversy. So I was like, no, fuck that movie. So
yeah,
I'll probably watch
it
it
a lot
someday.
for me to like. You have to really mess up for me to not watch something I want to watch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or read something I want to read. Like I said, Stephen King, I'm just like, dude, I can't. Like I can't do it, even though I love your milieu. I can't do you anymore. I have too much other shit to read. So you can support this white male writer by going on bendelesio.com. I have 5 novels, and you can order them, or you can contact me directly on any social media, or if you have my number, you can text me, and I'll sign a copy and send it to you. I do pay what you like with friends. So if I'm sending it to you, just pay for shipping, and pay whatever you want for the book. I'll sign it. I am out of my first novel. I haven't had those for a while. I'm probably not going to reorder them for my own sale, but you can always get my books online on either the publisher site or on Amazon. If it says they're not it might say temporarily unavailable, put the order in. The publisher will print it, send it to Amazon, and so you can always get the books. My books will always be in stock. I just might not have them personally, but I have the other 4.
Ben is a white male writer, but he's one of the good ones. So.
I'm one of the good ones. Don't worry. All right. So you want to do Reckless Rex and Rejects?
Yeah.
Do you have one?
I do, actually, yeah. So this is actually a podcast. Do mine
first, and we're
go
for it.
It's actually a podcast. So Robert Rodriguez, a filmmaker who his body of work, I think, is pretty hit and miss. He's done some really cool movies, and he's done some movies I didn't care much for. But I will say I love his ethos. I love his creativity.
Did he do Planet Terror?
Yes, yeah, he did that one.
Yeah.
And I loved El Mariachi, and that movie is kind of famous for the feature-length film that he made for $7,000.
Okay, I've heard of it. I don't know it.
It's cool.
Is he one of your Mexican soul brothers?
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, he's Mexican, but I will say this though. One thing that is kind of cool about him is just, so I'll tie this into my Reckless Rec. So he's doing the rounds, and I think because so he wrote a book. Well, actually, it was a journal that he wrote while making El Mariachi, his first feature length film, which came out in 91, 92, and he kept a journal of it, and then he published it years later. It's called Rebel Without a Crew, because he was basically the entire film crew.
Oh, that's a good name.
And so now it's become like an essential reading for independent filmmakers, because it just goes through all the ups and downs, all the troubles you experience as an independent filmmaker. So he recently did the audiobook version, so now he's doing the podcast rounds. So he was on Lex Fridman, and it's such a wonderful
really?
conversation.
You're on Lex Fridman? Okay.
Yeah, Yeah, and he's on Rogan. I'm listening to that one too, but I'll recommend the Lex Fridman.
Oh, I think I saw him on Rogan. They do make the rounds, like one.
They're all
on
friends
one
with each
pod-
other, so
Yeah,
they all kind of show up on each other's things.
and they're all aren't they all in Austin now? Austin's
Yeah,
like
they're all
the
in Austin.
podcast capital, so you can just kind of
Go across the street, just hit them all up. Yeah, and Robert lives in Austin too.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Oh, is he like from Texas? He's like a Texas guy.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I mean, Planet Terror takes place in Texas. I know that.
But it's you do not have to be a filmmaker or even a fan of his films to get a lot of value out of it, because he's just such a positive. He's like the king of, if something goes wrong, that's actually a good thing. Like that's actually a good opportunity to like make it to your advantage. And he just tells so many cool stories of like advice that he got from Steven Spielberg, because he was briefly developing a Zorro movie with Spielberg for a bit. It fell through, but he talked about working with Spielberg and like the advice that he got from him. Yeah. He talks about his friendship with Tarantino. He talks about the creative process. He talks about how to turn your failures into successes, what to do if you're not feeling inspired. So it's super inspiring. I will say
I'll listen to that.
And I do recommend checking out El Mariachi. Maybe we could do that for a reckless
a shed
selection at some point.
Yeah, it's one of those movies I feel like I always hear about, but I've never. Is it like splatter?
No, not really. No.
Oh,
It's an action flick, but it's super low budget. It's maybe
I'm just being racist and thinking of Machete.
Yeah, no. It's like, gunshots. It's action violence, but it's not over the top or anything. But so Rodriguez famously shot that film for $7 grand. And
very cool.
And he did no second takes. They were all first takes.
I love it.
And it's one of those things where it's like, but it's funny because if he fucked up a take, there's like, okay, well, we'll find a way to integrate that. So there's a shot in the movie. So the movie, it's sort of like a modern Western,
like a neo-Western.
Yeah. So the main character is a mariachi. He's a musician. He's just traveling from town to town. And there's a shot in the film where he first arrives in town, and there's a vendor, and he's got coconut. He's giving out coconut water, right? And so he goes and he gets a coconut water, and then he walks away. And then Robert Rodriguez goes, "Dude, you were supposed to pay him. Like, you couldn't pretend to like give him money or something." And he goes, "Well, sorry. Like, we'll just do it again, and I'll give him $1." And he goes, "Well, no second takes." So then the way they did it, they kept that in the movie. So then he added a voiceover of the mariachi character saying, "This is such a friendly town. They even give out free coconut water." So it's like, it's just sort of like,
that's smart. Yeah,
exactly. And actually set it up really well, because it's a case of mistaken identity. He's just a musician, but he gets mistaken for for like a criminal, and then but so it sets up like, oh, this is a friendly town. People are nice here, and then he gets caught up in all this criminal stuff. But there's just a lot of cool stories of this fucked up. How can I find a way to fix this in a cool, creative way? And sometimes he would come up with something even better. But yeah, check out his Lex Fridman appearance. It's super cool, super inspiring. So yeah, that's my reckless rec.
Very good. I will definitely check that out.
Yeah.
And I'll put some Robert Rodriguez movies on my list.
Yeah.
Is he related to Freddie Rodriguez?
Yes, he's a cousin. He's also cousins with Danny Trejo.
Oh, well, did he do Machete?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was in the right area.
Yeah.
He did Machete. Okay. Very good. I'm Pope Maxing because of the departure of Pope Francis.
Right.
I'd already seen Conclave, but it's funny how they were smart. They really capitalized on it on the Pope's death, and so I've just been Pope Maxing, and I watched the Young Pope for the first time. That's Jude Law. It was an HBO show. I think it came out 2016. I remember it coming out, and I was like, I don't know. Doesn't really interest me. And then I learned that Paolo Sorrentino directed it, who I've come to love. Yeah, I've only seen a few of his movies, but he's great. I know I was saying how much I was kind of let down by a lot of the Italian directors, because I was really Italian maxing last year before my honeymoon. I was watching all the classics, the Antonionis, the what's his name? Fellini. Like I was watching all those. I was really not into Italian neorealism, but then I watched some Sorrentino, and actually unknowingly, my top movie of I think 2022 or 2021, whatever year it came out, Hand of God. That was a Sorrentino movie. And then The Great Beauty is awesome. I love that movie. So anyway, like, and then I learned that he directed it, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch this. Now's the time. Like, Pope is in the air. So I'm not gonna lie, the first 2, maybe 3 episodes, I thought I was gonna quit. Like I was like, the Pope is so the young Pope, his name is Lenny Bellardo. He's actually an American, which is really weird. Like I feel like they don't talk about that at all, that he's like an American, but so he's young. He's probably in his 40s or so. It's Jude Law. So he's like very handsome, but he's so just kind of unlikable in the beginning and cruel. And I'm like, why am I like, it seems so shitty. I'm going to be honest. And I tweeted this today. Like, it is one of the best character arcs I've seen in a while. Like what happens in that show. And that doesn't mean he has like a complete about face and he's just like this gregarious, sweet guy. Like, no, he's complicated, but he is so interesting. And Jude Law is such a good actor. I actually forget how good of an actor Jude Law is. I feel like he kind of got cast aside in the past however many years. I feel like he was in a lot of stuff in like the 2000s and he was a big deal. And then he just kind of got ignored. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but he's so good. The story is so interesting. And I'm glad I trusted my instincts about like, okay, this is Sorrentino. He's great with music. He's great with like writing and like, he's just a great director. And I'm like, I'm just going to trust it. And it was it was 10 episodes. And I like that too. This wasn't like a 4-season show that should have had 2 seasons. Like, there was 10 episodes. Now they did do the new Pope that came out, I think like 2-3 years later with John Malkovich, which is a continuation. But again, that's only like 8 episodes. So I'm like, okay, it's 10 episodes. And that's why I love short shows, because it is that was so satisfying and so enjoyable that if it just was like 6 seasons, I'm sure I would have gotten tired of it. I'm sure they would have done ridiculous storylines. And the way they did it, it's complicated. Like, he still is super, super conservative Pope. So he's like battling with secularists and more progressive orders like the Franciscans and other cardinals. And he's like really anti-gay and anti-abortion and really doing controversial stuff. But he's also like super I don't want to give stuff away. Anyway, you don't need to be a Catholic to enjoy this show. I think it was wonderful. I want to start. I'm probably going to start like the new Pope this weekend, just because now I have no idea if Jude Law is in it. Something happens at the very end of the show. He doesn't die, so apparently he doesn't die. I don't know, but I've read one sentence for the new Pope. I'm like, oh well, that kind of ruined the young Pope for me, because I'm like, well, if there's like a scene where he might die, like, okay, I know he's not going to die, but that aside, it was really, it exceeded my expectations. And I'll say, so again, if you start it and you're like 2 episodes in and you're like, this guy sucks, this is not enjoyable. I'm not saying like every character has to be likable. Like Game of Thrones, obviously some of the best characters were terrible, but he was not like a Joffrey in that sense from Game of Thrones, for people who were Game of Thrones fans. Just stay with it. It is well worth the payoff, I think. So that's my Reckless Rec, is The Young Pope on HBO. Okay.
All right. John Malkovich, huh?
Well, he's not in The Young Pope. He's in the new Pope.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so he's, and who I love John Malkovich. So I'm twisting on there to see him in anything. Again, is it going to be like another, like there have been 0 American popes, and also we have 2 American popes? I don't know. I'm assuming he plays an American. It'd be kind of funny if Jude Law, who's British, played an American pope, and then John Malkovich played like a different nationality. But I guess we'll see.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
fight the crits.
And buy white male writers' books.
and They're really struggling right now.
Yep. Watch Robert Rodriguez, and who's Latinx, and the Young Pope.
Everybody, Stay reckless.
Adios. Fight the crits.